Assalamu alaikum. Myself Ahkam Ansari, student. I am back again with yet another video lecture of advanced web designing. In this particular video lecture, I will be talking about a new feature of cascading style sheet, that is float property. So our focus in today's lecture will be float. What is the effect, what is the use, what is the application of a float property in CSS or in HTML. So first we will see what is the definition of float property, then we will see what is the application, how we can apply in HTML, and how it's changed the look and feel of our web page. So let's have a look on what is the simplest float properties definition is. The CSS float property is used to place an HTML element to left or right. Okay, just try to understand. By using float property, you can move, you can float. Okay, you can move or you can float any HTML element or any HTML tag or any container tag like div tag, okay, or any image, means any HTML elements you can move, you can float. And we have two locations where we can float. The first location is left side and the second is right side. Means you can place, you can float any HTML element either left hand side or right hand side of your page or of its container. Container means, for example, if we have any container tag like we have div tag. So div tag is a container tag in which we can contain, we can hold a number of the HTML element. So if we move the elements, the members of container tag, so we can move towards left and right inside the container element. Okay, but if we won't use container tag, means we can use to left and right of our web page by using float property. Okay, so I think it's one of the simplest property of CSS, as the meaning is very clear that we are going to float our HTML element towards left or right. So we have three valid properties which is allowed in float, means we have three valid values actually. Okay, so because the float is a property and we have three valid values. So as a meaning left, so we have a left property, then we have right properties. Okay, the last one we have none property, means if you assign left to float property, it will move toward left hand side, and if you assign right, it will move to a right hand side, and the default is none. Means if you don't want to place anywhere, we have to assign none property to float. Okay, so in exam point of view, if you in examination can ask what is the values for float property, so the values for float property is left, right, and none. Okay, so these are the values for float property, that is a left, right, and none. Okay, so let's have a look on application. I am going to start coding. In coding, we will see how we apply these values in float property. So the first thing is that we have to create HTML page, then I will add CSS, and then I will add this property by using internal CSS, means I will use a style tag in head section, then I will apply this property. Okay, so I am moving towards my notepad. So to create simple HTML page, then I will add this thing. Okay, so I am going back to desktop, then in search I will type notepad, because I have to write code by using notepad application. Okay, so as we are using HTML5, so this line is very important or compulsory, doc type, and we have to mention HTML. After that, we have to write HTML tag, because this is the first tag of HTML, and then closing HTML tag. Okay, between these opening and closing, we have to insert all other tag, like the on top we have head tag, then after we have closing head tag. Okay, then body tag, one of the most important tag in HTML, because all the other tag will come between body tag. So this is the basic HTML tag which are the compulsory to create any HTML page. Now I want to add something. For example, I want to add one h1 tag just for heading. Okay, this is the h1 tag. Inside that I am going to write float property. Okay, so I have just written float property. Okay, so now I am going to add CSS. Let me save this file. Before adding CSS, I just want to save the file. So here I am going to assign some name. For example, I am going to assign name as a KMES already is given, or I can assign KMES float dot html. Okay, you can assign any name. So I have given KMES float dot html. Then I am moving back to my desktop where I have just saved the file. So we'll notice this is our new brand file which we have just created. So I will double click and I will run. You will notice that this heading is coming. Why? Because I have used h1 tag. Yet now I have not inserted any CSS, but now I am going to insert CSS. So in this file I am going to add internal CSS. To enter internal CSS, I have to use style tag between head tag. So this is opening style tag and this is closing style tag. Okay, so now whatever you write between these opening and closing style tag, it will considered as a CSS code. Okay, now I want to apply some effect on this one. Okay, on this one. So we have many ways to add CSS by using. We can use HTML selector, means we can use h1, or we can assign some ID, or we can assign some class. So in simple way, if I want to assign directly, I want to take a selector, so I will just take h1, then opening and closing curly brackets. Inside that I have to add properties and value. Okay, for example, I just want to assign property called background color. Background color. So this is the property, and value I am going to assign as a red. Okay, let me show you the result. Flip back to your browser. When I refresh, you will notice currently the background is white. Okay, now the background color has been changed to red. Okay, so now I am going to apply some CSS which is our today's topic, that is float property. So I will add float and I will assign right. Okay, student, please pay attention. Now I have added this property which is our today's topic, that is float right. Now when I save the file, see, currently this heading is in left hand side. Okay, currently float property is written or it's displayed in left hand side of the page, but when I refresh, it will move, it will float, actually it will float towards right hand side. See the effect. I just want to zoom if you want see it. Okay, this is our page. Currently it's in left hand side. When I refresh, you will notice that this h1 element will float towards right. See, now this has been moved toward right hand side. Okay, I think it's very easy and it's very interesting too, because I have just added one property. This is a float property and I have added value as a right. So this is your page currently, and I have just added float right, so it's moving toward right. Okay, getting? Now if you add float as a left, okay, instead of right I am going to add left. Okay, now I am going to change the background color, so you will get the killer effect. For example, background color is now blue. Okay, save the file, flip back to, currently it is displayed on right hand side because initially I was added float as a left, float as a right, but now I have added float property as a left. So you will notice that when I refresh the page, it will move, it will float towards left hand side. Okay, so it is a move from right to left because I have given property float to left actually. Okay, but if you go and add float equal to none, okay, if you add float equal to none, save it, refresh, see, now it is at its original place. Okay, now it is at its original place. See the difference, student. When I add float equal to right, when I saved it, flip back to your browser, now you will notice that it will move from left to right. It is its original place. Okay, but when I move to its right, it is float towards the right. When I move back, let me refresh. Okay, when I move back and change to left, okay, save it, flip back to your browser, when I refresh, you will notice it will come towards left. Okay, but when I change to none, you will notice it will move toward its original place. Okay, let me change the property to none. Okay, let me save the file, save it. Means by default it is in left hand side, but when you place as a none, it will move toward its original place. Now you see the change in its position. When I refresh, a little change means it will move toward its original place. See. Okay, student, so it was our topic, but if you want to add one more thing, means as I am given inside the example, that means you can move HTML element, either you can move toward the page or you can move toward its container. Container means, for example, if I add the same thing, same h1 tag inside the div tag. So now div tag is a container tag. Now inside that I have h1 tag. Okay, so I have closing div tag. Now this is the opening div tag and this is the closing div tag. Okay, so instead of, now this become h1 become member of this, or this become child of this parent. Means div is a parent here, and inside that div we have a child called h1. So if I apply on parent, it will apply on child. Okay, so now I am going to assign some id equal to, means I am going to add CSS by using some other way. Either you can use directly element as a selector, or you can use id, or you can use class. So I am using as a class. For example, I am going to assign as a ahkam. Okay, so here I am going to assign ahkam, but I am using here id. So before id you have to use hash symbol. This thing we have already done in our previous lecture. If you want to use id, the symbol you have to use as a hash symbol before your id. So your id is ahkam and your symbol is hash. Now background color will be blue and float you have written none. So if I just want to move to right, now you will notice, now it will consider its parent as its span. Okay, now it will not consider page because div is a container tag. Now this member, this child will consider that this is its word. Okay, div tag is its word. It will move according to div tag, not according to page. Means it will be left, right or none, but inside the div tag. Okay, so let me save the file so you will get the clear picture. Okay, or even I don't want to add this one, I will add after this. First I just want to show you how div tag will work, then I will add this thing. So I want to add one more property like width and height to that. So you will notice that what is actually div tag. Width For example, width I have given 300 pixel, and the same way height again 300 pixel. Now I have just created a div section or a div. So you will notice that what is the use of div, how div can be created. Okay, so this section, okay, this section is called as a div section. Okay, this is created by using div. Okay, so where 300 pixel is its width and 300 pixel is its height. Okay, now this, that is h1 tag, is a child of this div tag. Div tag here is a parent and h1 is a child. Now when you move toward left and right by using float property, this element will move left and right of this container or this parent. Okay, it will not move to here, means it will not move according to page, it will move according to its container. Okay, because this is called as a container or it's called as a parent. Okay, and this h1 is called as a child or member. Okay, so now I am going to add property. Let me change it to red, means my div color is red. And now I am going to add float property. Okay, now I am going to add float as a right. Okay, means I have added float as a right property. Now I am going to save the file. Let me save. Flip back to your browser. Now I have changed background color as a red. So the first thing is that it will change to red, and this element, that is the h1 element, will float towards right because I have given float equal to right. Let me refresh the page so you will notice these changes. Okay, means the whole container has been changed actually because I have added. So I want to change inside the h1 only. Okay, so instead of h1, okay, what I can do, I have assigned float property to div tag, but I want to assign to h1 tag id equal to, I want to assign id equal to kmes. Okay, I have assigned id equal to kmes. Now I am going to copy the same thing. Okay, control C I have pressed. Then I want to add. Now instead of acom I will write kmes. Okay, and here I will remove this because I want to add float property inside that h1. Okay, so I will remove all these things. Only I can take float. Are you getting, student, what I am trying to do? Actually I want to, I don't want to move the whole div tag. I want to float the h1 element only. Okay, and h1 element is a child element inside the div tag. This property is nothing but just to create a box, that is div tag. I have just created the background color I have given and the size I have given, nothing is okay. But here I have added float and I have added a value as a right. Okay, now it will consider on this one because h1 id equal to kms and id equal to kms I have. So the float property, this content will move. Where it will move? It will move toward right hand side, but it's a child of the div tag. Okay, this div and this div is a parent. Okay, opening and closing, this is a parent, and h1 is between opening and closing div. So this h1 will become a child, or you can say member. So this h1 will move, or it will float inside the div tag. It will move inside the div tag because div tag is here considered as a container tag. Okay, let me save the file. refresh. Now the whole div tag will come this side on default side. See, the only thing is that this float property, that's a h1 tag, has been moved toward right. Okay, this div tag is at its own place, but float property, this one means h1 tag has been moved toward right. If I change to left, okay, instead of right, if I change to left, let me save the file. Now you will notice that, okay, you will move to its left hand side. Okay, means only this element has been floating from left to right, but when I assign left, okay, when I assign right, for example, see the chain. What is the difference between container and page? Initially, when I assign right to this div tag, the whole div elements is moving towards the right of the page. But again, I have assigned right to only this one, that is h1 tag, but it is the child tag of this container. It will move from left to right to its container tag only. It will not move here. Okay, this is the right of the page. But if I say right of this container, so you will say this one is right side of this container tag or this div tag. So it will move to right side of the container element or container tag. Refresh. Okay, so it is moved toward right side of the container tag or div tag. Getting, student? So I think it is very easy that CSS float property is used to float any HTML element from left to right or right to left. We have three values for float property, that is left, right and none. Left property is used to move toward left, right property is used to float toward right, and none property is default property which is used for constant or it will not move anywhere. Okay, that's for today. If you have any query, anything related to this property, that is CSS property, please feel free to ask your question in comment section. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.